Hello, I'm going to be showing you how I paint this wave painting in acrylics today. I'd started off by initially putting down a very rough base layer, and what I'm doing here is building my lights and darks and my tones. So I'm increasing the shadows and the lights and just putting a second layer on. I'm using a small flat brush here. It just gives me the opportunity to work with a broad stroke or a narrow stroke, and I'm blending in. I'm using Atelier interactive acrylics, which I quite like because they're quite useful for blending. Now in this corner area I've put my darks behind, so I'm now adding some lighter colours on top of the wave. It's not a full, total white. It does have a little bit of blue in there. I'm saving my brightest whites for the foreground. I'm trying to use some quite rough strokes here. I'm using the side of the brush as well as the tip. I'm putting a little bit, I'm still using the same flat brush here, but I'm putting a little bit of shimmer onto the water, and I've got a slightly greenier mix. I've added a little bit of a Naples yellow into my blues, and this is just creating that effect of the ripples on the surface of the water, the texture of the water itself. Just putting in a couple of little breakers here, just looking at the way that the water is coming in towards the shore. Again, building up the texture using the tip and the side. I've moved over to a round brush here, but this is just to give me some more broken marks. So coming to my foreground wave here, I'm trying to build some of the splash and the wave as it comes forward, and also trying to give a bit more directionality on the curl of the wave itself. So lightening up that foam, putting some white on top of here. Again, trying to use the brush in lots of different directions to give broken marks and lost and found marks, little scratches, as well as more solid colour. I hope you can just about see what I'm doing here, but I'm trying to put that directional movement of the water as the wave curls over. It drags that air forward, and gives you that sort of whoosh effect. So I'm putting the paint in and then just moving it around ever so slightly. I do get quite lost in this bit. I do quite enjoy doing it, and it's looking at how that curl works and really observing closely. So I've got that left hand piece of whoosh in, and so now I'm just breaking up and putting a brighter white onto my foam on the curl. And with acrylics you do sometimes need to do this in 2 or 3 layers. It does sort of sink back into your background colours a little bit. So you do sometimes need to put on a couple of layers of white where you want it to be brightest. I do like it when I'm at the coast and I'm sitting there watching the waves and just see all the different directions that the water goes in. And it's very erratic, and that's something that makes a more realistic seascape if you can make your painting a little less formal. Working into the centre of this wave, I just wanted to lighten this area. I want this bit to ultimately look a little bit transparent, so if you make it lighter, it's almost as if you can see through it. And once I put the foam on the front of this, hopefully it would look a little bit transparent. The colours I'm using here, I've got a mixture of ultramarine blue, phthalo turquoise, some Naples yellow and some white. I've spent a lot of time over the years just staring at the sea, looking at it, sketching it, photographing it, and just watching how all of these little interactions and movements and the way all of these bits of light and foam and water move. And it's a real challenge to get something that is moving constantly onto a flat piece of paper when you're painting, but to still get it to have life and movement in it. So it's about looking at all those little changes of direction and all that movement and light. So it's good fun to do. So I'm moving forward now onto the area in front of my curling wave. And again, I just want to build up lots of layers of texture and movement, all those little ripples and planes on the surface. Not yet am I putting the foam on top, but it's just the actual surface of the water itself. And I found this is the easiest way to paint the sea, is to forget all the froth and bubbles to start off with. You have to build the shape first. And then once you've got that right, you can put the foam on top and it works really well. So again, I'm using the same series of colours. It's the whole painting is a very limited palette. So I've got my ultramarine, my phthalo turquoise, my Naples yellow and some white. It's a mixture of those colours mostly. Just building up the froth and foam on the foreground wave as well, this last little curling wave, putting some light into that, but making sure I leave enough of that shadow blue, that ultramarine and white, to give the foam some shadow. Here I'm starting to build the foam on the surface of the water, and where you have the wave lifting up, and like I said before, I wanted this bit to appear a little bit transparent. I'm painting the foam in a darker colour because I want it to be as if the foam is silhouetted against the wave. We'll get the white further forward, but on this stage I want it to look silhouette to give me that transparency in the wave. And the way you have to think of this is a bit like a ski slalom. It's just squiggly lines. If you look at photographs of the sea, or look at the sea itself even better, you can see that they make these amazing shapes, and it's worth just spending a little bit of time having a look at them and getting a sense of how they work. Now here under the shadow, it's thick, the water is thicker, so it's not going to be in silhouette here, but I'm not painting in my whitest white yet. Again, I've gone back to that ultramarine and white combo to give me a shadow colour. So this is going in areas around the edge, in the transitions and underneath the edges of the wave. As I'm coming out onto the flat area of the water, the foam is now going to be in the white colour. So for this area where the light is hitting it, it's pretty much at the brightest white, pretty much a neat colour here. I'm using my flat brush and I'm doing this sort of sideways scribbling is what I call it. When the wave lands, the foam will give you a solid area of wave and then little holes appear in it, and those holes spread and break up until you have the lace work of the foam at the water's edge. So what I'm trying to do is paint that foam edge so it's that lace work, and I'm looking at little circles joined up. And as I move down to where the wave is slightly less in direct light, I'm gone back over to my blue and white mix, the ultramarine and white, just to give me a slightly shaded version of the foam. And again, this is all adding to the shaping of the water. I wanted to show you in detail here how I'm using the little flat brush on its side, so it's a fairly fine mark that I'm creating, but I'm quite happy if it dots and dads and leaves little gaps in between. I think that works quite well to look natural as the waves, because this foam does tend to break up. So I'm starting here with a flick splatter. I tend to use my brush to splatter and just tap it with my finger, but the secret to this is making sure you hold it at the bottom of the brush as far away from the bristles as you can, and that allows the tip to flick and give you these big blob splatters. Of course, not everybody is comfortable you doing that, so if you want to tap on another brush, that also works extremely well. But this is my personal preferred method, and this is what painting's all about. It's about your personal preferences and how you like to work. You kind of get a little bit of control in terms of the direction. So if you angle your brush to the left, you'll get the splatters going off to the left. If you angle it to the right, you'll get them going off to the right. But to be fair, there's not a huge amount of control in this, but just give it a go. The closer you are to the canvas, then the more control you have. However, as you just saw me do there, you do sometimes just dab your brush onto the canvas as well. So take care, but try and get as close as you can. So this method gives you nice, big, visible splatters, but there is another type of splatter that we can use that I'm going to use any minute now, and this is a flick on across the end of the brush. I'll show you my brush closer again in a minute, but I'm just dragging my finger across the tip of the brush. This is an old tatty brush that I've got using, but of course you can use a toothbrush if you'd prefer. Now the secret to splattering isn't just about the brush and the techniques, but it's also about the paint. So you need to dilute the paint a little bit. If you imagine the paint coming out of the tube as softened butter, you need to have your paint at a consistency of milk, and that will allow the splatter to take place. I'm just going to repeat the same process down at the bottom here on my front wave, and this very fine splatter, it gives you very small dots. It kind of gives you a bit of a haze. So I'm just going to repeat that along here, and it breaks the edge up. I use quite a lot of splatter in my paintings, but you don't always really notice that there's so much there. Thank you for watching me paint this seascape. I've called it Wave Break, and I'll be putting it onto my website very soon, so if you'd like to pop over and have a look, it's deniseallen.co.uk, and I would also love you to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Arty Denise. Thank you for watching. See you soon.